Welcome. This podcast is created to explore the many different ways people move through our world, especially when life, health, injury, circumstance, or the environment can make everyday experiences easier or harder in different ways. We all experience the world in different points in our lives differently, and by listening to one another, we hope we can build more awareness, more empathy, more understanding. The goal is not to define anyone by a label, but to learn from real experiences so that we can design homes, workplaces, technology, public spaces, services, and communities that work better for more people. Today, we welcome Sarah Lilley. Thanks so much for being here and for being willing to share a little bit about your experience. And before we jump in, just want to remind you there's no wrong or right language here, and there's no questions that could possibly have a wrong answer. So please, whatever words you feel most comfortable with, please use that and be true to yourself. The next 20 minutes is all about you. So please feel free to have a conversation with us and guide that. I really appreciate you helping us better understand what a more inclusive world could look like. So the first question, I guess, is just Sarah, can you just introduce yourselves and tell me a little bit about you?
Yeah, hi. So Sarah Lilley, I head up user research and business change uh, within the public sector organisation. And I've probably been doing that for about 7-ish years in various guises. But yeah, this has been the first opportunity where it's made me sit back and think, oh wow, actually having in my circumstance a temporary disability really does make such a significant difference.
Amazing. Well, so tell us a little bit about your circumstance then. What have you experienced, especially in the last part of your life?
So I had a just a really small operation on my eyelid, and it happened unexpectedly, the appointment for it, but the fact that they got me in to have the operation there, done and dusted in the same appointment, um, did surprise me. So I had a small operation on my eyelid, but that left me wearing a quite hefty half face eye patch for 24 hours. So in essence, um, for that period of time, I only had the sight in one eye.
So you're obviously very glad to hear that everything is okay now. I'm guessing that it went
Oh,
well.
yep, yep,
Yeah,
it's all good.
everything's good. So you have what we would call a temporary disability, right? Because at
Hmm.
that point in time, and it's one of those disabilities where it's not gradual, it just hit you immediately, I'm guessing, right? So you had to
Yeah,
adjust for not knowing what's coming at all, not being able to prepare for it, to I have to adjust to a world now, at least for a while, that you're not used to.
yeah,
So, and that's
definitely.
sort of like something that we want to sort of look into and tell other people about. Because one of the things we're advocating for is, you never know.
Yeah,
It's not just about people that have a disability today. We all will have a disability at some point, temporary or later on in life. So we're just spreading the word, and a lot of people listen to this will have something that they can relate to, and a lot will actually learn and benefit from what you say to us today because they'll learn little things about it that they'll understand and will make sense to them and empathize a bit more. So what happened when you sort of, I guess, got home? I'm guessing did you drive yourself home?
no, no, I had my husband with me, so that was fine. But I will say that it started immediately after the operation when they were taping this eye patch onto my face, and the first thing they asked was, "Would you like a sick note?" And I'm lying there thinking, "No, I don't. Why would I need a sick note? It's not affecting my ability to think. It's not affecting my speech. I'll be fine. I'm going to just go home and I will work the afternoon as I planned to." Um, so I dismissed their doctor's note, said thank you very much. I'm sure I'll be fine. Walked out a little bit kind of, obviously it's the shock from having the operation and everything else. Walked out to speak to my husband, and chatting to him on the way home, and he went, "So what? What? I guess you're just gonna, chill out this afternoon." And I'm like, "No, I'm just gonna work." And he was like, "You what?" He said, "That's just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. That you cannot work with on a screen with one eye." Um, and I'm like, "No, no, it will be absolutely fine. I will make sure that I take regular breaks." And then I was messaging my work bestie to say that this is what had happened. And she came back and said, "Oh, okay, so you'll be off this afternoon." And we had the same conversation about, no, why would I do that? And everybody else was saying to me, "No, it's going to be a lot more difficult than you think it's going to be." Um, but I knew best. So I,
Don't we all
I,
in those
I
situations?
know. I
Yeah.
was like, I feel absolutely fine. Um, and then I think as we were driving home and as I was stopping off to get kind of antibiotic cream, and then as I came in and I was walking down the path, suddenly I realized how disorientating it is to only to have lost the vision in one eye. And uh, so I did start to kind of question whether I was being sensible about continuing to work. But I had meetings that afternoon, so I did log in and I did sit there and started to kind of cancel a few of the meetings, and then realised, do you know what? Actually, this is not feasible. I was getting really tired looking at the screen. Um, and yeah, it was that realization where I'm like, wow, temporary disabilities really do have a massive impact. And whilst you yourself might not realize that, um, and they may not impact you in the way that you think they might impact you. Like, I found eating with one eye a little bit disorientating, because you're visually you're using both eyes, aren't you, to kind of work out where, and so that kind of depth perception was really different. There were all sorts of different ways that um for that 24-hour period that struck me as being much more difficult.
Yeah. And what were the
Absolutely.
following days like as well? Just, as because I'm assuming you had it for a while. Were there certain adjustments or ways you learned, just eating? Was it, what was that experience like for you?
I think, I mean, I had the eye patch for 24 hours and then I could take that off. Um, After that, it was okay. I still found for probably a week after that this eye would get a lot, even though I didn't have the operation on the actual eye, it was on the eyelid. It still, because that whole area was healing and bruising, it did still have an impact. So yeah, I would certainly say probably it took, a good 4 or 5 days for it to not feel for me to not feel as tired, but also for my eye not to feel so dry and gritty. And then when you're staring at screens, I think that just exacerbates things, doesn't it? Because I don't know whether it affects the rate that you're blinking or whatever it might be, but there are definitely changes to kind of how your eyes act when you're staring at screens.
Yeah. I suppose when we come on a screen, we're kind of showing up, we're putting that kind of face on, if you like, aren't we? And we're almost performing to the
Mm.
people on the other side of the screen. And I suppose, when you've got that that impairment or kind of disability, whatever we want to call what you were going through at that time, um, it's a distraction from that persona that you would usually have in that work environment.
Yeah, it's something actually that I wanted to ask is, the doctor said you want a note and you immediately just went no. Was that because you sort of wanted to get on with things because you had deadlines, or was it because you didn't want to, you felt like I'm not, I don't want to show that I'm, incapable of doing my work even for a bit. What was going through your mind what was the motivation behind saying no?
I genuinely did think it would make a difference. I genuinely thought I would just be able to carry on because, I could think the same, I could speak the same, I still had the sight in one eye. I just I just didn't understand how much of an impact it would have going from two to one eye in. And I don't think it matters how quickly that happens. It's still, it was still really uh, discombobulating.
Yeah. And you mentioned about going to the, instead of going directly home, picking up some stuff and finding out disorientation and things. Did that continue over the rest of the? How long have you had it? Did you have it for?
I had the eye patch for 24 hours, um, so not massively long, but it was little things like I'm not not sure. It was that depth perception, I think,
Yeah.
that had changed so much. So, kind of you reach for the door and it's not quite where you think it is. So you go to push it and you realize you've got to get a little bit closer to push the door. And judging, that there's a step that you've got to step up.
Yeah.
It was just really small things. I'm pretty sure I might have looked a little bit tipsy when I was walking down because I'm not even sure I could walk in a straight line. It was just,
That's so
and
fascinating, isn't it? I
and that
don't
might have
think you
just
were
been my
straight.
I know, and it might have just been my perception in terms of like for everybody else that I may have looked, like I was behaving as I normally would. But for
Yeah.
me, it just felt really, really different.
Yeah. And you said it happened suddenly as well. So it's that, you know, can't plan, can't put any, you mentioned some adjustments, your calendar, your meetings, those sorts of things as well. You weren't able to plan for that. So I suppose what
Yeah.
the question I'm trying to ask is, how could people have adjustments or be aware because it could happen at any time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very lucky. I've got a very supportive team and line manager and senior management where I'm working. So as soon as they heard that this had happened, they were like, "Yeah, absolutely, log off." And then, for the next few days, my line manager was checking in, going, "You sure you should be working? How's it feeling?" Um, so that was really nice. I think if I had been in a position where I had to continue working, where I didn't have that flexibility to be able to say, then I think, using using the screen readers in Microsoft would, I think, have been a godsend at that point because I wouldn't have been reliant, turning my cameras off so I wasn't having to look at the screen in meetings. So, I think if I had to work, there would have been things that I could have put in place, but I don't think anything would have helped with that fatigue because, your one eye is doing all of the focusing and all of the work, and you suddenly realize, that it's not just the one that's covered up that's affected. It's the other one that's having to do all of the other stuff. Um,
And I suppose it's
that,
one of those things you think I've got an eye injury, and it's my eye, but actually that fatigue, from what you're saying, it was actually more of a constraint in some ways.
yeah, I had to go to bed.
Yeah.
I did actually have to come home, and I was like, I am actually going to have to go and lie down because
Which, knowing you, is a very difficult thing for you to do.
it was quite difficult for me to do. Yeah, for me to actually confess that I have to go and lie down because it was, my eye was getting tired. I was getting a headache, probably because of the visual strain on the other eye. So there were definite there was a definite knock on in my kind of overall feeling and ability to do stuff.
You mentioned right at the start as well that it's that shock has really kind of adjusted some of your maybe assumptions and the way you thought about things previously. Could you share some of that with us? How has that experience kind of altered how you think and approach things?
Um, in work, we're always trying to push, accessible by design, about kind of that social model of disability where, it's the environment that disables you, not the conditions or the circumstances that you're in. But I don't, sometimes when you're a fully able-bodied person, um, you still make assumptions about what that might be like. And even just for that really short period of time, it shocked me. You know, and I know that people in my work area are working with, you know, kind of visual impairments. They've lost their sight in one eye, and I built a whole new level of respect for them, because I was like, wow, that must be exhausting on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's just made me realize that yeah, I'm a compassionate person anyway. So yeah, and I always try to factor that kind of accessibility stuff into everything that I do. But until you experience it firsthand, I don't think you can necessarily really truly understand what it feels like.
Yeah, it's that we can empathize and try and understand, and exactly what this podcast is about, is trying to understand and raise awareness in as much as we can. However, only the person living and breathing it day in, day out actually knows. I think that's what's so special about your kind of experience as well, is that luckily it was temporary. And but that also comes with additional limitations, because that temporary need isn't as easy then to kind of, you're incredibly fortunate where you work has those adjustments and that culture to support you. Um, Whereas in so many other scenarios, it may be the case that unless you have a permanent need, or you fight for adjustments, only then can you get that kind of environment where you can thrive. So I think there are some real limitations in terms of technically, those temporary needs as well, because even things like a blue badge, you have to be disabled for 6 months before you can apply for a blue badge. So what if somebody
Yeah,
breaks their leg?
yeah.
Those sorts of, the way we've designed accessibility doesn't consider those temporary needs in the same way. Was there anything when were at hospital and those sorts of things that they suggested, or I know they mentioned the sick note, was there anything that went alongside that?
No, but I think it's because it was quite a minor little operation, and you know, maybe if it had been more, say, like a cataract operation or something that was more on the actual eye itself, that they may have. But no, I mean, to be fair, I was shocked that they even offered a doctor's note, so I wouldn't have been expecting. I thought that went above and beyond. But yeah, in hindsight, if I ever have to have anything like that done again, I would definitely be accepting the doctor's note.
Well, and that's a good lesson for everyone as well, isn't it? In terms of, you accept the support when it's available, even if you think you might not need it necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Accept that.
because you said somebody drove you home, right? But what if you just said, well, I've got one eye. I'll take the train, and then I'll take the bus, and I'll on the way home. I don't have dinner tonight, so I'm gonna go and stop something and grab something from the shop and grab that. So it's things that we don't think about sometimes. And obviously, Sarah,
Mm.
you've had support through that. You've mentioned, that when you're walking in the house, you may not have walked in a straight line. So if I mean, how would you handle a knife? I guess, you're going to cut something, and I think you would have avoided it at that point in time. So, and 24 hours, I guess, is, it's an eye opener, although it's not that long. It's still sort of, imagine you were living with that for a week or for a month or for the rest of your life. How that changes things. So I guess, like one thing that I really got from here is the support that you need, even for temporary disability. You need a group around you. Your colleagues were supportive, your family was supportive, your friends were supportive there, and so that's a very good point to bring out. Is there anything that you would have changed now other than the note? Do you think that you would have sort of done something a little bit differently, something you wouldn't force yourself to do? You seem like the kind of person that just wants to get on with it, right? You don't want to things to affect you, right? Other people would probably capitalize on it.
Wow, you've only known me for 15 minutes and you've just summed me up so quickly. Actually, yeah, as you were saying that, I think I would have been kinder to myself. I was kind of just kept going, this is ridiculous, why am I being so weak? Why am I, just little things where but hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? The saying exists for a reason. So yeah, I think it's just accepting it for what it is, being grateful that it was temporary, which obviously I was, and that there was kind of no longer term treatment required. But yeah, just to give yourself that time to heal and to adjust. And your body is very good at making adjustments relatively quickly. So, you talked about a knife. I'm trying to cast my mind back on but I think I was quite merrily chopping vegetables in the with one eye, maybe with my hands a little bit further away from the knife than usual. But um, but it's just recognizing that you can't do everything as well as you could do it before.
Yeah. So then I like the phrase you used, be kinder to yourself. There are limitations, and sometimes you need time to adjust. Sometimes you need to understand that you just have to do things differently, or that you'll need a little bit more time, and that's absolutely fine.
And also not to be embarrassed to ask for help. I think that's really important as well. I mean, I said about my support network that was around me. I was easily able to say, "Oh, look, I'm really struggling with this. Can you help me?" And that help was forthcoming. So yeah, just be kind and ask for help when needed.
Kind and ask for help. That's a fantastic. I mean, one of the things that we wanted to always ask you is what advice do you have for someone else? But that summarizes it really, really well, I think. Is that the message that you'd give to people that undergo something like that? If it might be their eye, it might be crutches, it might be something, or it might be even sort of like someone who doesn't know what will happen going into, I've had friends going into surgery going, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to come out with 100%, 80% or 50 or 0%. Ramsey Hunt syndrome, that's something that hits you one day and changes your life, and you might or you might not get better, and there's lots of these. So that two pieces of advice for me is gold, so thank you for that.
No problem.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that the big part for me is it could be anybody, anytime to have some adjustments that has an impact. So thank you so much for
Yeah,
sharing your story.
No
Sarah,
problem. It's been a pleasure.
thank you so much. I mean, sharing your experience so openly. I know these conversations can be personal. We really appreciate your honesty in these. I hope this helps other beautifully diverse humans think differently, to consider how others experience the world and create a more inclusive world because of that. So thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.